That off. And then, so it should be muted. We
Is Jeff zooming in?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wow.
Okay, I've got 7 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June Town of Pelham's June Planning Commission meeting. If I could have a roll call, please, starting to my left.
Connie Schultines.
Brad Valentine.
Kyle Icon.
Tim Pritchard.
Carol Hannah. Jenny Sisson. Cheryl Ramey Hunt.
Thank you. We do have a full quorum. I could ask the board to review the minutes submitted on your tablets and motion approved.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Jenny. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. There is no old business. We'll move to new business, which is petition at 510 South Main Street for Kyle Smith, primary plat.
All right, so this is a plat that you're a little bit familiar with. We did have a discussion on the item on this last month. So this is a property on the corner of Main and Tile, as well as Laurel Street, and we're looking at 14 lots. There is one existing lot there with a home on it already. Half of it will be the RC zoning and the lower half is SF2. So they've got their technical drawings in. If you want to look at page by page, the PDFs are in the G drive. If you want to zoom in on that might be of concern to you. They did take your comments into consideration from the last meeting, and there is now an alleyway that will serve the RC zoning lots. It'll be minimum 15-foot wide with a 25-foot right-of-way dedication. So I will turn it over to David, and he's happy to answer any questions you might have, any comments, anything like that. As far as any heavy engineering, that'll move in at the secondary phase should you approve the primary. There are some concerns that our engineer already stated with I guess like drainage and runoff, because it's a bit of an odd site. It's a little bit higher up, but that's something we'll get into in a second.
Thank you. For the record, David Gilman. This is a 211 South River Avenue. Well, over the last 6 months, we're sort of at the end of our public hearing process. And we think that our request to get additional information and some feedback at the last meeting was very well done. The feedback we were able to work with both alley put in. We're going to parallel some plan. Which makes us feel comfortable that we now have, or will have in the near future, some on-street parking. If you look on the first page, there'll be no drives on Main Street, north of lot number 12. Sidewalks will be constructed all through Main Street. And I believe a portion of that sidewalk will be done in construction with the widening of Main Street, sidewalks of tile, sidewalks. The alley will be paved, serving all the 10 lots. Everything as Heather was mentioned, there are 5 lots, one with housing system. Larger some portion. Part of the ask from the city or the town was to dedicate a drainage easement that would be between lots 14 and 15 for undeveloped property to the west. So if somebody develops that property, access to the drainage, we've made that through our plat. So that's just being proactive and planning for the future. So let's have needs to get drainage property from Main Street west back to the west. There will be a new 21-inch drain tile put in. It was brought to our attention, I believe, by one of the gentlemen early in the process that he was concerned about how that tile functioned on Powell Street or the inlet. So we'll put in a new 21-inch tile and take that from Powell Street all the way to the legal drain to the south. So that water that may build up on Town Street will now be accommodated and collected and taken away from that area. So that should be a positive. We are asking for one waiver for consideration by the board. In a plat typically would have a 25% of the area dedicated as common ground open space. You'll see that for earth mounds, landscape areas, playgrounds, pocket parks. We don't have that available, especially on the 10 miles to the north. But what we do have is a development that's got excellent walkability. We're putting in the sidewalks, and as a crow flies, you're about 2,500 feet or a 10-minute bike ride or walk to the golf course to the south. The same distance, almost identical to Fall Park. There is an elementary school that's really close that has a playground. So we think just the way this is positioned and as part of the old town, that we were asking that 25% dedicated open space be waived. But on the other thing, this open space can just be very passive, conservative. We do have probably an acre, if not a little bit more than the required acre and a half, of what I would call protected open space with that legal drainage and all that wooded area that's going to be preserved. Nobody can develop it. We can't touch it. It's there for a very specific purpose. So it's not like we won't have an area that's 100% developed. You'll still see a lot of the terrain, a lot of the woods, a lot of the that you see there today. So I think with that, I'll get up to questions and respectfully ask for your plat subject to the required.
No, I just would add on to that, I'm also not concerned about the lot coverage either. I know there's gonna be like an actual, quite a bit of green or preserved space. It's just not gonna be common space that typically you would have. Which is why the 25% waiver is, there's not gonna be an exorbitant amount of. So I'm not concerned about the actual lot coverage either, to kind of just mirror that.
And where are we at on exteriors? You want to touch on that a little bit? I know that
Well, I could bring Kyle up. We will have to meet the standards that the ordinance lays out. Scott or Kyle and I have reviewed them pretty thoroughly, and we're pretty comfortable that we could meet those requirements of the garage setting back being less than 30% or something of the width, the pitch of the rugs and things like that. We should accommodate. What we will do is we'll submit those individually for a plot plan and a permit review. And then the staff will determine, I'll do a checklist of here's what I think we've met on every one of them. And let the staff review and sign off on it, so.
And these are mostly gonna be custom homes. Yes. So we do have the anti-monotony standards, which, typically when, I think probably would be in secondary, but like some of our larger subdivisions will, when a purchaser comes in for a lot, we have to make sure it's not like the one right next to it when they select a home. So it would kind of be similar to that, but if these are all custom, I mean, they're all.
Is there a
We will-
specific architectural style that you're trying to create here in this small neighborhood?
Do you have a style that you want to add? I printed some off that, definitely. So just kind of rough ideas, right? I just want to get some out here. Pass it along. Here's like 3 of them.
Start them down there.
Yeah,
if you
there
want
you go.
to. Pass them down.
I mean, these are not set, obviously. We have people that want to build their home, will design those, have an architect, draw them all up. I build any spec build homes, they will look similar to something like this. They'll have big front porches, they'll have a lot of craftsman style stuff to them too. Obviously the rear load garages.
So the garages will be in the back.
They'll be rear load,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in theory, they could be side load.
Yeah,
Rear
I'm
load.
on lots 1 and 2, we might try to do side load because we got like an extra 5 foot.
Oh,
It will, they'll still be come off the rear, but they'll turn and go in.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'll let you. look at each one.
yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't show anywhere on the plat that they're rear load.
Off the alleyway,
Yeah,
do we need to have that on
well, I
there?
mean, I guess if that was kind of the point of the alley. I see those northern 2 lots you could potentially feed off of
Yeah,
tile, but I guess as far as the other ones, maybe some sort of,
Probably needs to be noted, Hannah, because he sells a lot. Someone goes in, designs their home, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
or put a no access easement on the main street and the east and west lines or something to.
I'm sure I wouldn't get a building permit.
Well, I mean, and
Scott
that'll,
made it perfectly clear.
that'll be on the secondary plat, but we just want to make sure it
Yeah.
conforms to the primary.
Right.
Well, and future owners and the owners after that.
Yeah.
What's your plan for planning along the sidewalks?
Plantings. We took away what you guys said last time. We were talking about the trees and everything. We took those away. We're just gonna put trees in the front yards. A, you guys recommend it. B, I've always been a big fan of that because that just ruins your sidewalks. I think the trees get bigger. but I'll do whichever one.
Well, I think we had some concern about just blocking the view too, that.
Those are the drives come out. you can see
Yeah.
them too.
Moving them back's better, I think.
Yeah.
We could work on a minimum landscape plan in the front yards. So at least everybody's consistent.
I think the UDO has planting
I was gonna say,
requirements.
Yeah,
so-
there is
I think
1 or 2 shade trees, a couple ornamentals of deciduous shrubs.
And as far as exterior materials on the home, are we looking at hardy over vinyl or what are we doing?
Yeah, there'll be no vinyl. It'll all be hardy board, LP siding, and then brick or stone. So, I don't do vinyl.
So they'll blend in with the other house, built right there, and,
Yeah, there's two duplexes.
and then right behind it, there's one, I think, being redone on Old Press as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah,
the whole
I mean-
area is gonna,
Yeah, it'll look
I didn't know
all
about the
newer, like rings, property, and then my house, all of them will have that type of material.
So I know you maybe briefly touched on it before, but a major subdivision requires detention.
This is not considered a neighbor, so it's that traditional.
So because in our stormwater ordinance, it says the post-developed, I think, 100-year can't exceed the existing 10-year. So does that apply?
I believe that will apply, but our engineers.
There are some notes there on that.
My only other thought would be some sort of way for people to turn around in the alley. Well, if there's room to put a extra pavement at the end to be able to do a U-turn.
I mean, you could do that, but if people are going into their driveways, they could go in and.
Well, if somebody goes in or you have a delivery that pulls in there for some reason, and they want to turn around. It's either that or back on. I mean, they can back out, but.
Well, I think the thought is that once Main Street gets widened, is that they can use that on-street parking lane for deliveries. And then Tile and Laurel are not nearly as busy as Main, so if the UPS driver needs to park in front of a house that's more facing Laurel, they'll just park there. That way from the side.
And I assume trash would be on Main and Laurel and Tile.
Trash would be on the alley.
So as long as waste management
Yes.
is okay with.
And they are, I know we've been discussing with them, because we had a whole thing with where was that, where they couldn't fit the truck down there, but then we couldn't get people, they have the special truck essentially. Yeah, but we've dealt with that before.
We've got a special truck in town currently.
Yeah, I just can't recall what street.
So I know,
There's some over on East, I'm sorry, there's some over on John and East that can't get around the corners of those alleys.
so you're proposing some reduction in the regulated drain easements, so I assume you're coordinating with, because that's all still county.
It
Those are
is,
very
yeah. We'll
easy.
take it over, but I'm
But
just
they're
not sure how-
petitioning the county.
They are.
Okay.
I went to the county and I have not been able to get back to the meeting yet, but write up a letter,
Okay.
and that's all they wanted, they'll do whatever this city said.
Yeah, our engineer advantage. Yeah, eventually those will all be deeded over to us, to this, these our regulations and these county regulations. I think they're pretty similar as it is right now. I'm just not sure how long that process.
How will snow removal be handled in the alley?
I would say a pickup truck.
I mean, yeah, however we do it. Yeah, here.
I think the
Probably gonna be shoved on the back of those two lots.
That was my question or concern. Where do you place the snow that you removed? Because
we're gonna have quite a bit of distance after the last two driveways to the end of the alley there. I know it's hard to see on the picture, but I mean, they got,
Yeah, there's a considerable
there's
amount
got
of space.
space.
Okay.
For the space to go there, and then you can push it off the edges too. In reality, that's what they'll do. Let's push it to the end and let it. melt
And
down.
it'll melt right
It
down
gets
to
to
the
the
ditch.
end of them, I guess they can scoop it up and put it.
That's not gonna happen.
Go out with the little.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's not gonna happen.
I'm just thinking he may have to get design. To get it timely to do it. Now, the homeowners might end up doing it, you know. so.
It'll be shoved right down in the alley, melt down the slope curve. Okay. Questions?
Well, I feel like that you've addressed all of our concerns that we had in the last meeting. Appreciate that.
I thank you guys for taking everything. I think that area is gonna shape up well.
Questions or comments from the audience? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain motions for approval.
To address the waiver.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we'll put the waiver now. It's I'll make a motion to approve 2022-01-510 South Main Street for Kyle Smith. With a variance for the 25% open space requirement.
Jeff, is it technically a waiver? Do we have to say a waiver?
Variance.
Very-
I think I always confuse those two issues.
About a 25% open space requirement.
It's almost a condition, and okay, or sorry, Hannah.
The way the UDO states it is that the planning commission can permit a waiver from development standards at the preliminary or primary plating phase. That's just how it says it in the UDO.
Okay, let's go with that language then. It's, I think it's just labeling, but it means the same thing. Let's definitely call it what our code says.
So
A waiver from the 25% open space.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for 2022-1. Stipulation of the 25% open space waiver will be applied to that. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you.
Denise, do you have the printout of the Excel sheet?
Oh, Kyle, do you want your renderings here?
Okay, so next we've got reviewing and voting on some possible amendments for the EDO. I'll go through a few just short ones, and then mostly we're gonna focus this evening on the solar information. So if you pull up on your. did you
Which one are
print?
you going off of? Are you going off of this or the one? Okay.
Yep. Do they have a copy of that? No, that's okay. It's on the G drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd you find it
I
at?
think it's under UDO doc. Yeah, it's a spreadsheet.
22. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one we have is just, well, first two is our minor residential subdivisions. So in our UDO, there are 3 districts that are missing from that, that could be used for single family subdivisions. They would very unlikely be used, but there's a few parcels in town that were kind of grandfathered in that are just, if someone wanted to split that into 3, they would have to, I don't know, go through rezoning. I think it wouldn't happen very often, but we should probably add those to our minor residential because they are technically residential districts. They do allow the 2-family, which I think is why they were excluded in the first place, but we can put language in there that only the single family use can be utilized in the minor residential subdivision style, should anyone ever want to utilize these types.
So can you give me an example? I'm not picturing what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
So like if, I guess there's kind of 2 ways you could go about it. So if someone had an ag lot and they wanted to do SF3 zoning and split it into 3, which would be a minor residential subdivision, right? Currently, the way we have it, it doesn't allow for that. So if someone wanted to have smaller lot sizes, smaller setbacks, things of that nature, we only allow splitting in SF plans. So I don't think it would happen very often, because typically, like we noticed with something like 439 Water Street, they just wanted to split that in half so that they could have, 2 lots. So I don't think it would be utilized very often. However, I think it should be an option. should something do that. Or if we have, there are some, let's say like RC zoning, parcels that we have that were grandfathered in and they're very large lots. If someone wants to split that into 3, they do have, that's the only one with the maximum, but should they want to split it into 3? So it's kind of just giving the option, but I don't think it's very often.
You're limited to 3 lots in a minor.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes. So, and I, again, I think the reason that these weren't put in that in the first place is because these 3 districts allow 2-family and multifamily. The other 2 are only single family homes. So I think that's probably why they were excluded, because minor residential subdivision is almost That's it, nothing else. So we can put language in there, should we, allow someone to use this zoning style that they can only build single family housing, even though the option is technically zoning district for two.
But you said the minor residential subdivision process only applies to single family.
Yeah, it's that you can
So I don't
only-
think that you could do a minor two-family plat.
Right.
So do we?
I mean, it would just be like additional language to clarify, I guess,
Oh, okay.
like we know that, but someone might read it differently. So just to keep it clear, even though these districts do allow that, this style is only for the single. District.
Explain to me again why we would want to encourage, why you're recommending that we modify that. I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm not sure why we would be encouraging smaller lot sizes.
I mean, it might, just be someone doesn't want a house that's very big or if someone wants to split something. I mean, I don't think that we should discourage smaller lot sizes. I think there's a good variety of what we have. So I just think the option should be out.
I mean, like if the Water Street house was an SF1 zoning for some reason, they wouldn't have been able to split it. They would have to get a rezone to RC or some other district and then split it in half.
No, I think
Right.
you've got it flipped. So if they had like an SF3 zoning on that lot, they
Uh-huh.
wouldn't be able to split it into pieces.
Okay.
They have to zone it to something that's allowed.
So we're gonna hold it to the square foot. We're gonna hold to the square foot minimum.
Yeah,
then?
they would be held to every minimum that the zoning districts have. I think so. SF3 is. So yes, they would absolutely be held to every part of the zoning code for these districts.
You're only gonna be able to make 3 lots. I mean, it's not-
Yeah, that's it. Anything
No
other than
street
that is a major.
improvements, nothing like
Nope.
that.
Yeah.
So
Nope.
so
There
it's
are
just
some
flexibility.
larger lots kind of around.
Right, and like I said, it's probably not gonna be utilized very often, but
Yeah.
there are either some kind of like medium-sized ag lots or some grandfathered in lot sizes that are much larger than what we would probably allocate them as now, but they're just grandfathered into that's similar zoning, I guess you could call it. So this gives people the opportunity, should they ever want to. do that. It's there.
And that is without any street modifications, adding additional driveways, you'd have to use the current access.
No, you can add driveways, but it's not like major road improvements, like they wouldn't be building a Maplewood Drive or, something like that
You access an existing street.
off the existing street.
But accessing an existing street, we've established standards where you can't have multiple drives within X number of feet.
Mhm.
They still have to adhere to that.
Yes, they'd have to adhere to every other, our access management, our street standards, well, street standards, sort of. But,
It's gonna
they'd
be
have
hard-
to
it's
add.
gonna be hard to do.
Hmm?
It's gonna be hard to do.
It would, but there are some lots where it could be. So kind of in that same breath, our minor residential subdivision allows ag as AG1 and AG2 as an allowable subdivision zoning. I know you can get single family housing by conditional use only in ag1 and ag2. So that was something I wanted to ask you guys if you think that should be removed from minor residential. I wasn't really sure why it was there. I kind of want to pick your brains about it. Because if it's strictly for residential use, single family residential use, I'm not sure why ag lots are included in that subdivision style.
I would say nothing to do with it.
Well, I mean, so if you have an 80-acre ag parcel and you want to split it into 2 40-acre lots
Or three.
or 3, then you
Yeah.
could get a variance from the BZA for single family use and use a minor instead of having to rezone or go through a major process. It's just-
Yeah, you'd have to get you'd still have to get a conditional use to have housing.
Yeah.
So there's an extra step there. But I just,
I mean, what if you wanted to split it up to distribute it to your heirs or something?
Mhm.
Then you could use the minor process just to split the land
yeah.
in a cost-effective way.
I think what I was kind of going at with that is that when you split this land, you have to develop it as single. So.
In the
when you
using the minor.
Minor residential subdivision style. So if you're splitting up an ag lot, I mean, you don't have to rezone it because both of our agricultures allow single family as a conditional use. But it's just, it seems odd to me because it's not inherently single family residential development.
So when you split the lot in an inheritance situation, it would have to be developed then?
I think the use would have to be single family, so I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. It's kind of confusing to me too.
So can you split it and leave it vacant?
Sure, yeah, that's why I wanted to pick your.
I mean, you're still gonna have to meet the minimum lot size requirements of Ag 1 and Ag 2,
For
which
sure.
are large.
Yeah,
We split the property on 425, which was Spiegel's property out by you. That's been 5 years ago. There's 5, 6, 7 lots that were approved then. There's frontage lots that haven't been touched.
But you'd be limited to 3 parcels anyway.
Right.
And I don't think you can do it again. Like you can't keep splitting the same.
County
parent
won't let you do
parcel.
that.
Well, I think there could be a use for it. I mean,
okay, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to leave it in there. I just thought it was kind of, it was a little confusing to me, so I wanted your thoughts on that one. But we can definitely leave it in there. So as far as the first point of adding those additional residential subdivisions, Jeff, do we just vote on all of our amendments as a whole, or do we need to do them individually?
It'd be fine to vote on them as a whole.
Okay, all right, then I will wait till the end when we're done with the solar stuff, but is there any comments on that or, you know, anything I could change on it for you?
I mean, I think adding those smaller lots into the minor plat process doesn't create a problem because you start to meet lot sizes,
Absolutely.
access spacing,
Yep.
all those other things. So
So it would be more difficult, but it's there. should
there could be a
someone-
use
There
for
could
it.
be.
It would come across here anyway, so we could address if there could be
Yeah,
a safety concern, if there's, the driveway going
Right.
in and
Right.
might not be suitable.
right, because
Once
the way
that's split.
the way the minor works is that the primary and the secondary both come before you at the same time. So it's not, you know, a multi-meeting process. So it's quicker. That's kind of the point of it. That's all right. I will keep that one as is. And then on the ag districts, again, I'm happy to leave that in there, but I just wanted to gather your thoughts on taking it out. All right. Last thing I've got before Denise gets to all of the solar steps. So our conservation subdivision type allows small lot ag or ag 2 and rural residential as a type of lot zoning district you can utilize. However, in my opinion, that really contradicts what a conservation subdivision is trying to go for, which is clustered development in one section of the property and the rest is left as nature space, which is common open public space. Ag 2 is 10 acre minimum lots and rural res is 5. So you'd have to have a hefty chunk of land in the first place to be able to split lots into that size. And also that doesn't require that those lots, I mean, they're private, they're not public common space. I mean, it wouldn't count towards the total that conservation subdivisions require. And also it being private lots, people can rip out the nature should they want to. So I don't think that those really serve that subdivision style very well. Those are really, really large lots. And even if that is common space or space that maybe a covenant is written into, an HOA that you can't rip out the trees and whatnot, it's still not common space, which is the point of that conservation subdivision. For the people that live there, it's supposed to be for everybody. So I don't think that those should be as part of the conservation.
So as clarification, it's public space for the residents,
Yes,
not public space for the general public.
right. It's like, kind of like Kyle's, it's a common open space for the residents that are living there for them to utilize.
You have to kick people out.
Then the maintenance of that space falls to
The
the
HOA.
HOA.
Mhm. Which, and those are, typically a conservation subdivision has a lot more of like those already kind of nature maintained spaces where they don't require grass cutting. It's like trees and natural shrubs and whatnot. So it's almost a little bit less maintenance, honestly, doing that. But yes, it would be required. Any parts that, are an HOA would have to take care of.
Well, I was just bringing up the wetlands, because we
Yeah.
do have a number of wetlands around here, and the state does require maintenance of the wetlands
Yeah.
and
And that
control
would
of the
be-
invasive species,
Mhm.
and they could be very labor intensive.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
just trying to understand.
Absolutely.
So by taking these two out,
Mhm.
do you see anything we're not addressing?
Denise and I are currently doing kind of a deeper dive into our conservation subdivision. But this was kind of square one for getting more kind of like places having a little bit more style that I know I'm familiar with. I think it's kind of like our solar standards where it's just a standard template and we really need to fine tune it to fit our community. But this was kind of the first step is that, these 10-acre lots or 5-acre lots where it's just right to utilize the space in that way.
So are there any examples that you would reference as a conservation district in Hamilton County or anywhere that will allow us to kind of visualize it?
Yeah, I can put some examples on there kind of for our next round of amendments when we get a deeper into that conservation subdivision style. I know that I've done some research on it and found some, not necessarily here, but and visual examples and kind of places ordinances. So
Why wouldn't we want 5 or 10 acre lots?
because they wouldn't be considered towards the open space requirement, like the point is to cluster all of the development in one spot, which again, in theory, you can do with 5 or 10-acre lots, but you're gonna need a considerable land to parcel up. And I just don't think that would serve that subdivision style best. And that these are private areas and people don't, again, necessarily have to conserve them because it's their property. So that was just kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah, usually when you have 5 or 10 acre lots.
Right.
It's just the lots, and that's it.
I mean, I
I would agree that.
would think you have to
That
have,
could
like,
happen though. I mean, there's a lot of outlying land out there.
Could.
Someone could take it someday.
big lots, big
Yeah,
parcel.
there's people that want that. People want 5 acres and a horse barn and a horse corral.
But I don't think that's like a subdivision being developed. That would be in the.
That's kind of how.
Because it is really about,
It's
like,
a
if the
subdivision,
paper, it
yeah.
is the subdivision, you're clustering your homes and keeping a large part that's untouched.
Yeah.
And that's, the conservation piece is usually because there's natural landscape that you don't want to harm because there's water running through it or trees and you just don't want to plow it down. So you keep that as a nature preserve that the rest of the homes can utilize. So it's not just a big flat land that we're doing 5-acre squares on it. So that's where, it's talking about cluster and
Yeah, and I can definitely get some more information once I get deeper into this particular topic. But I just kind of thought right off the bat, those don't seem to me towards that.
But I think if we have what you've suggested, that wouldn't even fall under this definition anyway. Because it wouldn't be those
Yeah.
kind of elements necessarily.
I mean, it's still considered, it's a subdivision, so I don't think you'd be able to have a horse barn or a stable or whatnot in a subdivision. It'd be like taking Carrot Glen and plopping it on 1,000 acres. You know, like the rest of it is.
No, but there's developments between here and Noblesville or even over towards Newcastle where they've got a road out through this field. It's rolling ground.
Mhm.
And there's 10 and 20 acre estates out there with huge homes on them, huge barns, and they're beautiful. Down through that road.
I mean, we can still, in the major subdivisions that we have, anything over 3 lots is a major subdivision unless it's SF or RC zoning. We can still utilize that, but they probably wouldn't necessarily be conserving anything. So we could have a subdivision with 5 acre lots, but they would not be required to conserve all of that area or have it be public / common open space. Where that is feasible in a major subdivision style, just it wouldn't fit conservation.
Conservation could be a big lake. It's a big lake. A big pond.
What do you mean? Like they're conserving a lake or a pond or?
Or building one to set aside.
Revisit if you-
I
I
think
mean, it doesn't hurt anything leaving it, I guess, but it just doesn't.
I think it's on the other end of the spectrum that we just had the smaller lots.
Yeah, so like what's allowable in here, yeah, they are typically smaller plots that would cluster in one corner.
Zionsville's got some one-way dead end roads. It's got big lots, horse corrals, horse farms.
You can still do that.
They make sell for a lot of money.
Yeah,
My opinion.
Just want to table it till we get more info on that one.
Let's table it.
Well, yeah, 'cause you're gonna bring examples.
So far, the only one we're gonna do is the first one.
yep. All right, so last we've got solar amendments, so I'll let Denise come up and walk you through these. We had an educational kind of seminar last week. Whatever that was. Where we kind of went through all of the points that Denise had found our video was lacking. Just kind of discuss them in length to educate ourselves about, what we are indeed missing from our videos. Have a good workshop, yeah. Then Craig Switzer, he attended, he's our supervisor, and he had a week, he met with me early. Incorporating his thoughts. I put, it's on the Google Drive, but also there's a printout copy if you want to take it. It's includes full clarification as far as the topics and the items that session, but also Fisher. They pretty much are support of allowing accessory use for all. Other than that, at this point, they are not allowing
responded through email to a couple of the staff there, and I can tell that some of them are very pro solar and commercial and want to expand into that. But they're, they're just taking small steps in that direction. And so right now, they just put some things up. For commercial. But if you want to, look through that, later time, also in there, I wanted to point out that Jeff was very helpful in providing some resources as far as the state, what statutes they have issued. They also had a bill passed. The guidance to clarifying what limits HOA. So just kind of being mindful of that. We had great discussions last week as far as, we want to be able to give our individuals solar systems, for our town. But everyone will give them that opportunity to have that for their own purpose. But we also want to make sure that we have some grants in place that to make sure that it is safe. Product that is going to be able to be conducive for and considerate of neighboring properties. And so we kind of have a look into what our current UDO provides. What we came up with was this list here. We can go line by line. That's kind of what we did last week. The items that they felt that they wanted to front of the entire board consideration. There wanted to point out, though, specifically a couple of additions since the conversation. Craig Switzer had a conversation with Hannah Rose, and that is regarding the use and operational standards in the section. So the last item, the maximum kilowatt. Less than 10. So we wanted to add and further on down the list, we had talked about the bucket yard. There was some discussion last week that maybe 6 bucket yard height was not sufficient, not maybe one. Kind of look back to UDO since then, and kind of thought, might be helpful if we compare and make it easy with what already is in place with our subdivision buffer zone requirements. That was 4 to 6 what we have currently, but we can easily add in at least that minimum 60 yard, but maybe clarify an additional layer to that it has to meet that buffer requirement. Put in that what those requirements are. But it breaks it down to that 3 shade trees, 6 feet tall, screen, whether fence or wall, and then it kind of breaks it down to the shrubs. And then also on that back page, it references when it is up against the wall. Street, what those bucket requirements are. So that might be a good starting point, but we can beat those up however we like. We want to requirements for that. We also want to make sure we clarify that those buffer yards are complete, but then not within. Then about in as far as any type of changes, but want to go through it line by line. We want to just kind of talk them out, and I can just kind of walk you through it and say yay type thing, or time to take a look at it here. The first one that we started out as far as accessory use. Well, kind of on the same page that allowing the accessory use of all three districts. So we want to preserve that RC zoning district. And if they have that extra. That is to
With that too, I think we're get some more research from like DNR, historic landmarks and the landmarks on if they kind of had a study with historic solar. And you know, that might be something where one day we just remove that conditional use, have a separate set of standards for specifically RC zoning when it comes to accessory solar. So that's something to think about too in the future, that we might develop kind of a separate set of standards. If there is kind of some best practice out there already.
Yeah, keeping it as conditional use kind of
Yeah.
buys us some time a little
Yeah.
bit, so we can dig into that a little bit deeper, and then also that downtown business zoning district, having them come to get. If it's on RC, it can't require them to come for the PCC, but we can put downtown.
And I think all of these, especially on the accessory use, I mean, we had a pretty basic
Yeah, it was like 3 paragraphs.
yeah. And
There
all
was
of
not
this is
really
just
much
designed
info.
to make sure that it
Yeah.
is not something that's going to be visually obnoxious, you know, whatever. It's gonna fit in, it still look
Yeah.
like it's going to fit in. And we had a lot of discussion about the fact that it's not really financially a good decision at this point, but we know that technology is going to continue to improve, and at some point it will become more financially start making sense financially, so we can't stop people.
Yeah.
We want to have it in place before that happens.
Yeah, and we're basically positioning virtually everyone to have access to it on their property, on their structures,
For their
adhering
own
to the
personal
guidelines
use. Yeah,
for supporting their own personal property
Yeah.
and buildings.
yeah,
So we're not restricting anything with regards to access at the individual level.
but we want to make it so that the neighbors are not don't have any-
Subjected to a monstrosity.
Yeah, it's not detrimental to the neighborhood.
Appropriate screening.
Preserving the character of the
Of the
neighborhoods and the
neighborhood,
surrounding
yeah.
houses. and fire.
We want to go ahead and go line by line. kind of go through that.
If there's anything in particular that jumps out that you want to talk about.
I think the one thing to throw out, there was a lot of discussion concerning fire safety
Yes.
and the positioning on the roofs, the valleys, and side, top, and valleys, so that fire safety can be taken into consideration. Access.
And talking with Chris further about that, he felt like the perimeter was sufficient enough. They need to get to it. So he felt that it would be fine. If it was, one of the comments was, what if it's a 10 feet structure, do we need to have a break in the center of it to have some center? They're probably not going to send this guy up there and walk there anyway. We'll get to the mountain. We feel like this would be from the east to down.
We had a lot of discussion and I left that off. Would they need to inspect and then Craig said he would need to inspect. I know he told us some stories of what he's seen so far, but I could not remember if the fire would need to inspect it.
we incorporated the roof stability report. For that to be
Okay.
provided by the
Okay.
company.
Thank you.
So that, we did add that in. It will be inspected by Craig, so once it is installed, then he goes to the resident, and the contractor doesn't even have to be there. He has to make sure that it's shut off properly. And when it gets connected. And then at that time, that resident would sign. There too, that they've got to have some coverage insurance wise, that they've got to, support, homeowner. He will affect it. When he connects it to the grid, that it will shut off. And then we did have, I believe it was the commercial end, that section did not have a site development plan or information. It wasn't on that writing yet, so we want to make sure.
Would it make sense for us to make a decision first on the accessory use upgrades, kind of put that section to bed and then go to the commercial?
That sounds good to me.
I think all these look fine.
Fire guys gotta get on the roof. They're gonna remove that panel one way or another. It's not gonna be pretty. That panel's gonna be, that panel will be at least their word.
I make a recommendation that we accept the solar energy system accessory use upgrades as documented. Closed here.
So moved, I'll second that. We're just doing the first paragraph.
Yeah,
Brad?
the use, the accessory use
Accessory
upgrades.
use upgrades.
Okay, we wanna
That first section.
then table the commercial to next meeting or?
No, I think we just approve it
As we
and then
go.
move to the commercial.
It's
Yeah.
fine.
And then that way it'll keep it just a little
Simple.
simpler.
It's fine. A motion is second. All those in favor of the NCS accessory upgrade amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, accessory part is approved. Second part is the commercial.
On that commercial, and reiterate here, that same zoning requirement, it was where currently the way that it sits is that if the property that is commercial use, solar energy system is installed on, if it's installed on a property that is surrounded by the same zoning property, then those setbacks per that zoning district apply. Well, so if you've got ag, it may be somewhere between only 25 and 45 feet setback. If it's gonna land on a farm property that you've got neighboring farms all around. So the concern was that maybe if we want to, if it's bordering a residential property, let's eliminate that same zoning requirement, just take that off the table altogether, and then incorporate a little bit more tighter setbacks for the borders residential property, 500 feet. It's non-residential, 50 to 200.
Residential zoning or use?
Residential.
So if you have an ag 2 parcel with a house on it,
It'd be 200.
it'd be 200.
Yes. You're right.
So it's 500 for anything that's
Because a lot of our other zoning UDO items are use based, not zoning based. So this is going to be zoning based, not use.
yeah, 500 for anything residential. So, and then 200 for.
I know we had discussion too about the fact that even though it's zoned ag right now, does that limit or prevent that adjacent piece of property
Right.
from becoming residential? at some point? Because no one's gonna wanna buy it if
Solar
the
and
solar unit's already on it and already has the 200-foot setback. I still feel pretty strongly that we should have the same setback for the entire piece of property, no matter what it's next to. Because it could be harming the value of that adjacent
Right.
property.
Right.
And it does tie it up 24 years.
Yeah.
Property.
Yeah.
So,
Not at all. We don't, we're all-
And again, we know that it doesn't make financial sense maybe at this point, but someone still don't.
Right, they get
Tie
that
up their property.
considerable size of ag land that.
To have 500 all the way around.
Except the road.
We did, the height, it was 20. Reasonable for commercial. Going blank on the different heights from this one.
And just to be clear too, if it's a commercial building that is using it only for their personal use, that falls into the accessory use. Right.
You can sell it.
Yeah.
For them only.
All about the buffer requirement.
I think the buffer should be 360 degrees, the perimeter of the property,
Yes.
and
yes.
protecting the adjacent properties, whether they're currently developed or not.
That's what we have.
Yeah,
as
but the entire.
360.
Yeah.
And the outside of the fence, so. It's a wire.
And I like using our current buffer yard types. And I think if it's 500 feet setback, I feel like a heavy buffer is going to be.
Same for the, buffer yard width requirements for the roadways. That's the only one that's gonna be. So the buffer would be 360. And if 500 on both sides. So depending on the. But the buffer yard would still have. So that was kind of another point, because there wasn't anything. About how far it had to sit back, like the roadway. So that's kind of the only part where we should not. You're not gonna see it.
So what if you have, like a row of houses along a highway or roadway that all face the road? And they're 50 feet back from the road, that means just 40 or 50 feet beyond them, the solar panels could be there, so they would really only be like 100 feet from the house.
I mean, there would be that buffer yard with 6-foot berm. Buffer on top of it. Fence. So I'm not sure visibility wise if it would really see it that much. And then in front on the road.
Well, I was just thinking of the adjoining homeowners.
Yeah, yeah.
People driving.
Right, but that's a pretty intense buffer. And if it's a busier road, it's perfect.
Should we make it a minimum setback from the road for solar of 200 feet? That would ensure that we're not getting into. some of the
Yeah,
other
but if there
setbacks.
are houses there now, there could be in the future.
Correct.
I like that.
So we're gonna have 500 feet for adjacent properties and 200 feet on road
On the road frontage.
Minimum of 200 feet.
Yeah.
setback for the,
Yeah.
for this, yeah, for the equipment.
And that's for all road types.
Yeah.
Right, but that works.
Where did we leave with in regards to the commercial use and that are going on with the state in regards to that or anything small?
Jeff said that there's really no. I did find, there was, about fees. That was the only lawsuit that I was able to come across. Jeff did say that he feels that it's probably coming down the line. That are out.
And that lawsuit was basically whether setting the wholesale rates of buying back any excess generated
Yeah.
from accessory use.
Yeah.
So it was more of a rate structure type lawsuit than,
Yes. Take advantage of the zero net meter.
Sooner or later, the power companies aren't gonna let you live for free. They're gonna be charging you. They're gonna charge you a fee to hook up on it. I mean, that's what happened to the phone company. Nobody uses a home phone anymore. They're not maintaining the poles and wires anymore. But it's got a cell phone. There's no money there.
and the tough thing, during the discussion about, power systems is the grid still has to be able to support
Right.
peak use.
They don't have the
and
money to
or
keep it up.
Other times when
Yep.
solar storage is inadequate to maintain the,
You'll always get a power bill or something.
I've seen on information as far as like the kilowatt, we can have 200 amps for. So, why one reason why he suggested it.
There was nothing for that. Basic guidelines for signage. One identifying sign. Signs around. As part of the workshop. Allow. people to advertise the final and then like Denise mentioned, like development.
and I think strengthening it with state, federal, and local guidelines in regards to waste material handling and things like that to keep us in compliance as things begin to evolve, especially at the federal level.
Is there any of that currently right now, or is it very just basic waste material?
Yeah, what I've seen on the other examples, it's just general. Covers them to just say that they're helping the guidelines.
Sites to sources.
Anyone have any questions on the commercial? We talked about the waste control. Same thing with the glare, terminology. There might have been one.
So do we actually need to get this written into language then, to put into the video, or is? Can we
I mean, and most of these things we would just add.
just in the same format that they are?
Yeah, pretty much incorporate it into the
Yeah.
section where they would follow. Yeah. So, give it front, town council. Will attach. Past that.
Does that work for you, Marissa, the way we've been doing it?
It's for documentation, that's helpful.
Mhm.
But besides that.
So really, the only thing we've modified are the
The
setbacks.
setbacks on the
Everything else is-
commercial use.
Yeah.
There are no other questions. I will make a recommendation that we adopt the solar energy system, commercial use upgrades as provided with the adjustments, the minimum setback of 200 feet from the property line. That's what we discussed.
I have a motion for commercial use upgrades with the addendums as identified. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the commercial use upgrades, please say aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Easy stuff, yeah.
Building code, just the language is just kind of. The other part is there is a definition for that 3,000 less. 3,000 more is automatically considered. So, Anna has brought up this point that rely on the and then we definitely do not want, type of thing next to it.
Make a motion to approve that last section then. I make that motion. All right.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second for the residential commercial use upgrades. Item number 3 on our agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
So did we vote yet on the minor residential added those 3 districts to minor? I don't remember.
We didn't vote on the
That first one.
First.
there.
first 2. We left one out, didn't we?
Yeah, we're gonna leave the ag 1 and ag 2 in the minor residential subdivision style. But the addition of SF3, SF4 and RC to
I
that.
think that first one's the only one we, yeah, just that first one. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to label that some way, Hannah, or how do you want to spell it?
If you want to amending the subdivision style or the zoning
SF3,
districts. in the
4, and
minor
RC.
residential.
Pardon me?
If you want to, it's the amending the minor residential subdivision to add 3. Can you remember that?
What she
Sure. What's this?
I'm not voting on it. I can't remember what you said. Here, just say
I
what's
will,
in the
I
category.
We got a stamp.
Just say what's right.
Carol's got it.
I've got it. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the minor residential subdivision, missing residential districts to include SF3, SF4, and RC.
And I'll second that. And I'll
Don't ask
second
me to
that.
say it.
Good job. Hearing that, a motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Simple.
That was simple. A lot more simple than I was making it.
Can I ask one question about the solar?
Sure.
Is it in writing, the suggestion he made to limit the amount of kilowatts? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that's on there.
Is it in here?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be
Yeah.
sure.
10 kilowatts.
So I'm looking for it, I couldn't find
Wasn't
it.
there until today, but I added it.
Okay,
You know, it's right.
Max
Okay.
Less than
Thank you.
10. And then I also
Okay.
just,
No wonder, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
thank you.
do we need to, I know that Brad's motion for the commercial use upgrades, it said to change the road frontage to 200. Do we also want to just technically say that all the other sides are 500? Because as it's
Yes.
I
written,
thought the perimeter was covered.
no, it's perimeter for residential is 500. So we want
For
all
all perimeters.
all perimeters except the roadway to be 500 and the
Yes.
roadway 200.
Right,
That is
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
That was,
that's all we want.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have that covered because
No.
I just heard the road. Okay. That's all I got. Sorry. Okay, so we have a new planning intern. This is Reese Swimmer. He's from IU. What college is it? Bloomington. Okay, I'm still trying.
There's actually a college in Bloomington.
It's south.
Huh? The college in Bloomington, bro.
Yeah.
part.
So
Oh,
I've
okay.
got a lot of planning projects for him to dip his toes into. I know we had discussed at the solar workshop, getting some information on our website. That's where he's gonna start. And then also kind of our small homes. For that. Yeah, we are very jazzed to have him
And
here.
what's your name again? Sorry. Reese. Reese.
You live here in town or where?
I live in Anderson.
Okay.
So you school in Spear?
I am, yeah.
Very good. I graduated from Spear.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Stephanie Buck, and she's replaced me in my former position. You'll start receiving emails and so forth.
Welcome aboard.
This is one of the shorter meetings, just letting.
I know,
And non-controversial.
Yeah.
Any questions,
Because we
comments
had
from
a
the
whole
board?
class.
Any final comments or questions from the board? Anybody? The audience? Ed, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I like it when they give us a class, 'cause I can follow better, number one. And I feel like I know what I'm voting on.